Hi, everyone. So for the DA4 crit session, I chose the website that I created for the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript activity or option. It was interesting because the last time I had developed anything using HTML was way back in the day when everything was kind of table-based design. So what you would basically do is set up an HTML table and then put stuff into the table. So the structure usually was pretty rigid, pretty inflexible. I remember using CSS, but it was mostly just to style text. And so really hadn't had any experience using CSS to actually design the page itself. So for this activity, I really challenged myself to use CSS and HTML for the layout exclusively, so no tables. And so the content for the course that or the website I created was the our module of instruction from ldt550 that my partner and I created, which is basically saving money at home by taking quality family portraits at home. What I wanted to do is make sure I gave plenty of space for the portraits, the images throughout, and then, like I said, use CSS to lay things out. And the nice thing about CSS is the fact that it allows you to style individual elements. So where the table-based design, you kind of put things in table cells. In CSS, you put things into containers, and then each of those containers can have their own properties. And then the nice thing is that as the browser resizes, everything resizes within it. In terms of being mobile friendly and responsive, the laying things out in CSS definitely helps. And I played around with, breakpoints in HTML, which is basically a way to say, hey, if a screen size is, between this range or below this value, then do certain things, show certain elements or do different things. And so, for example, you see the main navigation up here. When the screen size gets to like a tablet size or even a phone size, that disappears. One of the other things I liked about this activity was the ability to get to know JavaScript a little bit. I had done very, very little of it back in the day. My partner and I did our project in LDT415A. We used H5P, which is a very elegant and great HTML and JavaScript tool. But I wanted to replicate the knowledge check functionality just using straight up JavaScript. And so, for example, in this knowledge check, you click an answer, and then a pop-up box comes up. And then also use JavaScript for what I call try it yourself activities. So in photography, there's kind of this relationship between, how much light a lens allows in to take a picture and the relationship that that light has on the background of the photo. And it's hard for new photographers to really get a grip to understand that when you let in the least amount of light is when your background is the most in focus. So this activity lets learners kind of step through the different apertures and see the relationship between the size of the opening and what the background's doing. So as the opening gets wider, the background gets more out of focus or blurry. In terms of challenges, I think breaking myself of the old habits that I developed in all those years of HTML design back in the day was difficult. I really, kind of still thought in terms of tables, even though I was using CSS and kind of put things in boxes and all the boxes were the same size and that kind of thing. Also avoiding inline styling. And so back in the olden days, if I had text like this where I wanted to put it under an image, I would just use, an HTML tag to make that text italicized. For this project, I tried to do everything in CSS, so I created a style called photo caption that has the text italicized. And so the nice thing about that is if I ever decided that I wanted, the photo caption text to be italicized and bold, I change it in one place in the style sheet and it affects all the instances of that. The other thing that I wasn't really was a challenge to me was the JavaScript quizzes. Even though I was able to kind of replicate the functionality of H5P, it's using these pop-up dialog boxes, which isn't ideal. I would much rather have, graphic representation of what's right and what's wrong down here, and maybe putting, some kind of explanation text here so learners don't have to click this button and then look up here at the top or click OK to try again and that kind of thing. I just didn't have the time to figure out how to make that work cleanly and efficiently.